Chapter 40. However, how would she know that this was a Special Forces hand signal? He timed the 10 minutes very precisely. He didn't need to look at his watch to know that the 10 minutes were over. If the students have any questions or find anyone suspicious, you can contact our team or the local police immediately. Sorry to disturb you, goodbye. He picked up the military cap on the podium and habitually patted the brim before putting it back on. The brim of the military cap covered his clear forehead, leaving only a pair of dark eyes that were as sharp and deep as an eagle's. When this pair of eyes swept across the students below the podium again, they paused briefly on Yi Qian's face. The other students didn't notice, but Yi Qian did. She smiled slightly and met his gaze calmly. Her petal-like lips moved slightly. Hello, Captain Xia. What a bold girl, she even greeted him. The smile on his handsome face seemed to deepen. Xia Jinyuan nodded at Teacher Ku, who was standing next to him, looking a little dispirited. He politely said, "Sorry to disturb you." Then, under the gaze of all the students, he left with the two soldiers standing by the door. Although they only appeared for 10 minutes, Xia Jinyuan's influence was too great. As soon as he left, the sighs of AI could be heard continuously. Naturally, most of them were girls, who couldn't restrain their thoughts for a while. It wasn't until Teacher Ku slapped the blackboard on the podium a few times in warning that the girls who had yet to restrain their thoughts secretly stuck out their tongues and obediently picked up their books to prepare for the lesson. The first lesson is math. Listen up, if anyone dares to drag our class down again, copy the test paper 100 times and stand outside the classroom for a week as punishment. When the self-study session was about to end, Teacher Ku, who had been silent all this time, angrily said a few words before she left. Her gaze swept across the students who had been dragging the class down again and lingered on Yi Qian's face for at least 10 seconds. It seemed that this sentence was only directed at Yi Qian. Yi Qian, who was flipping through his book, completely ignored the gaze that swept over him. No matter how she looked or stared, he did not take it to heart. The school's music broadcast was interrupted. Then came the slightly sweet voice of the third-year school's announcer, who spoke in Mandarin with a bit of a local accent. Students from Year 2nd Class 2, Yi Qian, please come to the principal's office. Students from Year 2nd Class 2, Yi Qian, please come to the principal's office. Teacher Ku, who had just walked to the door of the classroom, stopped in his tracks. There was a trace of hesitation on his gloomy face, and he quickly left with a cold face. Yi Qian walked briskly to the Principal Chen's office. After knocking on the door and entering, he saw Xia Jinyuan sitting in the guest chair, but Principal Chen was not there. "I'm the one looking for you." Xia Jinyuan looked up at the girl with sparkling eyes. His thin lips couldn't help but curl up slightly. Seeing that she was still standing at the door and had no intention of coming in, he waved his hand and smiled gracefully. "Come in, I have a few things to tell you." He had a wary look on his face. What did she think he was going to do? Yi Qian saw that he was treating her like a child and lowered his head to look at his 14-year-old body. He was indeed a little small. He was considered short in class. Chapter 41. It's not good for people who know too many secrets. Xia Jinyuan took off his military cap, and the smile on his face became clearer. How do you understand hand gestures? Who taught you? That handsome face with a slight smile looked elegant and gentle, but it made Yi Qian's nerves begin to tense up. He was smiling, but his eyes were extremely sharp, like a sharp blade that could split a person's soul in half, and could flash a cold light at you at any time. Yi Qian did not sit directly in the seat that he had designated. Instead, she sat on the guest chair that was closest to the door. Her expression was somewhat indifferent as she replied, "No one taught me. I just happened to see your movements." "That good? You just happened to see it and you know what it means." Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows, and his eyes darkened. His expression was still calm as he said, "You've changed a lot, but Uncle Jen is still protecting you." The 70-year-old first-grade sergeant major stood in front of the regiment commander. His vigorous voice resounded through the air as he told the regiment commander, "There is absolutely no problem with Miss Jen. She had the protection of a first-grade sergeant major and the appreciation of a world-class sniper. What other surprises could this little girl have for him? Grandpa Jen? Yi Qian moved his fingers, and his eyes became sharp. He stared at him and said coldly, "You're related to Grandpa Jen? Aren't you just suspecting me?" Not only was his temper bad, but it was also bad. Xia Jinyuan smiled and looked at her. He pondered for a moment, then said casually, "Relax, don't be so tense. We only have deep respect for Uncle Jen, and we will never offend him. I asked you to come here not because I suspect you, but because I want to remind you. Liao Jian, you can treat him like you normally do." This was the reason why Xia Jinyuan asked her to come over. He wanted to remind her so that she wouldn't get into trouble when she didn't know much about it. Although she was a little girl, she was calm enough to make him believe that she wasn't an impulsive girl who couldn't keep things under wraps. Yi Qian didn't expect him to remind her so directly. She looked at him with her dark eyes and asked, "Is he related to the people we caught in the mountains?" "So far, we've found out that he's related, but that's not something you should be concerned about." Xia Jinyuan didn't care about anything else. He reminded her again, and it didn't matter. "What you should be concerned about now is your studies. Just now, when I was retrieving Liao Jian's student file, I accidentally flipped through your results." The smile on his lips gradually deepened, and his gaze towards her was already filled with disappointment. "Student Yi Jian, you still have to work hard." He wasn't the only one who knew about his terrible results. Almost the entire school knew about it. Hearing it again, Yi Qian accepted it calmly. He smiled and said disapprovingly, "I didn't show my ability, so it's nothing." Yi Qian didn't even bat an eyelid at Xia Jinyuan's arrogance. He stood up with a smile and said, "If there's nothing else, I'll go back to the classroom. There will be a test later, so I have to prepare in advance." The little girl had a bad temper. He only tried to test her, but she immediately became stubborn. Even his last attempt to appease her didn't break the coldness in her eyes. Chapter 42. With the care of a first-rank sergeant major and the appreciation of a world-class sniper, as long as she did not lead herself astray, she would be able to carve out a bright future based on her own abilities. How many fathers of the generation dreamed of having a son born from a humble family? However, Deputy Mayor Yi did not know this. The bell for the first class rang. Under the accompaniment of Principal Qin, Xia Jinyuan led the soldiers to a jeep and left the town's middle school, heading towards the army. At this moment, Yi Qian had already started the first question of the math test. It was just a small test for the teacher to understand the students' learning progress over the past month. The invigilator was the math teacher of the class, a female math teacher who wore black-rimmed glasses and was dressed very seriously. She walked over as soon as Yi Qian started writing. Teacher had just reminded her to pay more attention to Yi Qian. Did the homeroom teacher's reminder mean that the student might cheat? She walked over with a serious expression and saw Yi Qian holding a pen. She only paused for a moment before writing the answers on the test paper. In just a few steps, she had already written at least 5 questions. And what about the other students? They were still doing it on draft paper. Teacher Yang, who had expected better from Yi Qian, suppressed her anger and walked over. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she stood beside Yi Qian and stared at the test paper with a serious expression. After a few seconds, her serious expression shifted slightly. She looked at Yi Qian in surprise and saw that she had written the correct answers without using a piece of draft paper. Was she calculating in her head? Yi Qian looked up at Teacher Yang, who was standing beside her. She seemed to have understood something and smiled. She continued to bury her head in her writing. It's a good thing that you can calculate in your head, but you still have to be careful so that you don't lose marks. Teacher Yang bent down slightly and gently reminded the smiling student, "After you're done, it's best to check it again." At this moment, Yi Qian had finished all the questions. Teacher Yang, who already knew the answers in her heart, had already given her full marks. She put away her test paper and called Yi Qian outside the classroom for a chat. When Xie Sifeng saw this, a contemptuous smile appeared on her face. So what if she changed? She was still an idiot who did not know how to do anything. What was there to be proud of? The students in the class were all used to Yi Qian handing in his papers in advance. They all had the same thought in their minds. Yiqian will still be in the last place. It can't be wrong. Both periods of mathematics were spent on exams. Yi Jian, who had finished her heart-to-heart talk with Mr. Yang, was already resting in the dormitory. When the physical education class in the afternoon was cancelled, Mr. Yang came in with the math test papers from the morning. Under the nervous gazes of the students, he called out a person's name and asked him to come up and take the test papers. As usual, students with full marks report their results. Although Mr. Yang was strict, he was a teacher who cared about the students' self-esteem. Zhang Wenjin, 100 points. And Jiasin, 100 points. The first to announce their names were the top math students in the class. When they announced Yi Qian's name, no one took it seriously, as if they had made a mistake. Since Yi Qian was the last to hand out the papers, Teacher Yang kept her at the podium as soon as she went up. Teacher Yang pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose and looked sternly at the students with their heads bowed. He said in a deep voice, "This time, the focus is on Yi Qian. 100 points. I saw with my own eyes that she managed to finish all the papers within 30 minutes. Wipe the disbelief off your faces. Don't be so naive to think that Yi Qian can't do something you can't do. She has been working hard in a place you can't see." Chapter 43. Every teacher would assume that a diligent student must be very hardworking. Taking notes in class and doing exercises at home, all of them grasped the main points of the teacher's teachings and formulated a study plan. Therefore, Teacher Yang also took it for granted. Unfortunately, Yi Qian could only take out her math textbook, but she couldn't take out a single notebook. Yi Qian, who never liked to lie and would never lie about such trivial matters, shook her head. Under the ambiguous gazes of the entire class, she smiled calmly and said, "Teacher Yang, I'm sorry, but I don't have the habit of taking notes." She admitted it so honestly that her classmates couldn't help but laugh out loud. This time, they weren't laughing at her. Sometimes, the interactions between people were just that subtle. Just because Yi Qian embarrassed the teacher in front of all the students, many of the students who both loved and hated the teacher suddenly had a good impression of her. Teacher Yang looked stern, but she was an extremely broad-minded teacher. Hearing this, she revealed a faint smile that was almost invisible. "You're an honest one. You actually made it so that I can't educate those students who also don't take notes." With a hint of humor, the entire class was unexpectedly more harmonious than any other class in the past. After class, some of the students tried to strike up a conversation with Yi Qian. "If only you were like this in the past. We've been classmates for 2 years, and now I know you're actually like this." They were originally classmates, and they didn't have any grudges against each other, so a few casual words were enough to break the distance. A few girls surrounded Yi Jian and started talking to her one after another. As for Yi Qian, she cherished her new life as a student. She remembered those who had hurt her in the past, but she also maintained friendliness with those who had never done anything to her. "When I woke up from my sleep, it was like waking up from a dream. I thought through a lot." Sitting in the middle of the circle, she smiled and answered the questions in their hearts. The huge change from before to after was somewhat surprising, but so what? She was Yi Qian, and Yi Qian was her. If you're surprised, that's your problem. What does it have to do with her? The math class representative, and Jiasin, was a straightforward female student. She was also the first student to extend a hand of friendship to Yi Qian. Hearing this, a smile appeared on his handsome face. "You're finally back to normal after waking up from your dream. Congratulations, Yi Qian." "Same to you. In the future, you don't have to worry every day about who will bully me today, and you don't have to lose bets until you have to eat breakfast for a week." Yi Qian raised her eyebrows and winked mischievously. She joked about the past, and it became a way to improve their friendship. And Jiasin laughed out loud when she heard that. "So you knew about it? Haha, I lost for 2 weeks last semester. It's winter. Yi Qian, I've been getting breakfast for them for 2 consecutive weeks." Xie Sifeng, who was sitting next to them, looked at Yi Qian, who was like the moon surrounded by stars. She felt as if she had spilled a bottle of 5 flavors, and her face was full of discomfort. She slammed the math textbook in her hand on the table and walked towards Yi Qian with gritted teeth. Don't be so smug. What's so great about getting full marks? Who knows how much you copied? Ying gets full marks every time. Chapter 44. Xie Sifeng, you're being unreasonable. And Jiasun frowned as she spoke. She had always disliked these girls who always bullied Yi Qian. After a few times, she realized that Yi Qian was willing to do so, so she stopped bothering. Xie Sifeng, who was in a fit of anger, glared at Jiasun, who was blocking her. It's none of your business. Get out of my way. Xie Sifeng used a little too much force. And Jiasun, who was caught off guard, was pushed backwards. Just as she was about to hit the desk, a pair of slender hands caught her firmly. Go back to your seat. I'll handle it myself. Yi Qian steadied her. His smile had completely turned cold. He stood in front of the furious Xie Sifeng and said coldly, It seems like last night's lesson wasn't enough. Do you think this school is your own home? Xie Sifeng's father was a contractor. Her family had some money, so she usually looked down on others. She never cared about the consequences of her actions and only wanted to feel comfortable. When she saw Yi Qian stand up, she instinctively took a step back. Just as she was about to take another step back, Yi Qian, who wanted to return the favor, raised his hand and pushed Jiasun back the way she had pushed Jiasun. Crash! Bang! Xie Sifeng's wobbly hands moved the desk and chair. Even so, she still fell on her but in front of her classmates. Xie Sifeng was stunned by the fall. She stared at Yi Qian in disbelief. She actually dared to push her in front of her classmates. Yi Qian. Xie Sifeng, who felt humiliated, shouted angrily. She stood up angrily and rammed into Yi Qian like a madwoman. Who was Yi Qian? He was someone who had worked in a security company for a few years. Her way of ramming into him was undoubtedly asking for humiliation. She was crazy, but Yi Qian wouldn't go crazy with her. He dodged to the side and pulled in Jiasun, who was standing behind him. He smiled as he watched the crazy Xie Sifeng fall forward. He couldn't bear to watch any longer. He closed his eyes slightly. After hearing an even louder plop sound, he slowly opened his eyes. An extremely cold light flashed across his jet-black eyes. Xie Sifeng, who had lost her face again and again, cried on the desk throughout the rest of the music class. She cried until the end of class. You were so cool just now. I didn't expect you to push her back. After class, Jiasun, who walked out of the classroom with Yi Qian like a buddy, put his arm around Yi Qian's shoulder and said with a bright smile, To tell you the truth, if you didn't push it back, I would have stood up and pushed it back myself. She had a very straightforward personality. No wonder she had always disliked Yi Ying. Yi Qian chuckled and said, There's no reason to give in to her. When it's time to make a move, of course, we have to make a move. So, you angered your sister so much that she ended up in the hospital? She's still staying in the hospital, but you're enjoying yourself today. A man's cold voice suddenly cut in with a hint of anger and hostility. The voice was a little unfamiliar. The person was also a little unfamiliar. Yi Qian looked at the boy with his hands in his pockets. His gaze was cold. He was dressed differently from the rest of the classmates. He narrowed his eyes and said, Oh. Then he remembered who he was. Gao Yang, the top scholar of grade 3 class 1. He was from Sky Town Middle School last semester. It was said that someone saw him being sent here on the first day of school. Chapter 45. Gao Yang, who came from the provincial capital, was different from the boys in town. He was extremely handsome with a hint of arrogance. He liked to wear jeans of various colors, a t-shirt, or a sports jacket. He had an arrogant aura that other boys did not have. His expression was also cold. When he saw the teachers, he nodded as a form of greeting. Are you mute? He frowned impatiently. When he met Yi Qian's gaze, a trace of disgust flashed across his eyes. He looked away and said coldly, I'm going to see Ying now. You're coming with me. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and said with a half-smile, If the school didn't forbid students from dating early, I would have thought that you were her boyfriend. Aren't you afraid of being called to talk? Stop talking. Even the brave Jiasin was frightened by Yi Qian's audacity. Damn, dating boyfriend? How could she dare to say it out loud? Yi Qian gave her a reassuring smile and said softly, "It's okay. Just listen. My relationship with Yi Ying is not for you to tell me anything." Gao Yang's lips were pressed tightly together. The disgust in his eyes was so deep that he could not hide it. His voice was changing, so if he raised it slightly, it would sound gravelly. He also realized this and immediately lowered his voice. "She's been crying. You're the older sister. Shouldn't you go and see your younger sister? Student Gao, right? May I ask, what does it have to do with you if I don't go and see her?" "Even if it does, it's not for you to say anything," Yi Qian retorted with a faint smile. She really did not like this student Gao. However, Ying did have many suitors in school, and Gao Yang was one of them. Probably because he was not used to Yi Qian's change, Gao Yang's handsome face instantly darkened. He reached out and blocked Yi Qian's path. "Stop right there. If you stop me one more step, I'll call you molestation right now." Blocked again, Yi Qian's eyes suddenly turned cold. He looked up and stared at him with his dark eyes. "Student Gao from the provincial capital, you should know what molestation is." And Jiasin felt her legs go soft, and so did her hands. Seeing the boy's gloomy expression, she pulled Yi Qian, who was so daring that he wanted to go to heaven, and their bodies pressed against the wall. They quickly moved away. "You scared me, scared me." And Jiasin's face was pale with fear. She patted her chest and stared at Yi Jian blankly. She was a courageous girl, but now, she was frightened by her boyfriend, puppy love, and molestation. Her heart was beating wildly. She was just a high school student. At most, she would say that someone was good-looking or had good grades. Even if she had some ulterior motives, she would definitely hide it well. Unlike Yi Jian, he even dared to say molestation. Yi Qian patted her shoulder. His faint smile was like a gentle breeze blowing through the treetops. His ink-like brows were filled with joy. "He won't molest you. Gao Yang is still a good boy." The girl, who had just caught her breath, was once again choked by Yi Qian's shocking words. "Student Yi Qian, don't say anything. Let me catch my breath. Let me catch my breath." If she didn't catch her breath, she would really be scared to death. "You understand? What are you afraid of?" Yi Qian's eyes were clear. He smiled like water. "You know the difference between a boy and a man." And Jiasin rolled her eyes. "I know, but don't say it out loud." Then she laughed out loud. Chapter 46. On the 4th floor of the school office building, Principal Chen walked out of the office with a white-haired old man as he said, "Uncle, don't worry. I will take good care of Yi Qian. You don't have to worry. I will take care of everything." The white-haired old man was wearing an old-style military uniform from the 1970s. Even though he was old, his footsteps still carried the air of a soldier. Even a world-class sniper had to be respectful in front of Uncle Jen, who had enjoyed a lifetime of special benefits from the country. "I feel guilty towards her. I hope you can teach her more." Uncle Jen sighed softly. "This child is smart. She is a good seedling. You can give her some pointers from Monday to Friday. When she gets home, I will give her some pointers. It will be easier for her in the future. At least, it would be easier for her than her mother." Principal Chen paused on his right foot as he walked down the stairs. He said happily, "It seems like I have the same idea as you. But I still have to observe this child's results. However, I heard from Teacher Yang that she got full marks on her math test today. Maybe I am just worrying for nothing." Speaking of this, Headmaster Chen's face darkened slightly. "Deputy Mayor Ye's family is too outrageous. Do you want to give them a warning? They are enjoying the glory that sister brought to them, but they are treating Yi Qian so harshly. Bad people have bad people to deal with. I am old. I don't really want to care about the outside world. I just want to nurture Yi Qian into a talent." Yi Qian, who was already playing badminton with her classmates, did not know that Uncle Jen had specially come to the city for her. He had a 2-hour-long talk with Principal Chen and also developed a very strict training program for her. After the evening self-study session, Yi Qian was called to the principal's office for a talk. This made Teacher Ku, who was the messenger, so tired that she was even a little scared to look at Yi Qian. She was called to the principal's office for no reason. What if she made things difficult for her in front of Principal Chen? Even though there were only 2 pieces of paper, Yi Qian felt as if they weighed 1,000 pounds. Her eyes were fixed on the first few words. After a while, she looked up and smiled bitterly. Principal, you really think too highly of me. The 4-year plan was developed just for her. Just this kindness alone was as heavy as a mountain. Her eyes were slightly red. Even her voice was a little hoarse. You think so highly of me? Really? Girl, you don't have to thank me. I'm the same as your grandpa general, we're both loners with no descendants. You should learn well so that our efforts won't be in vain. Headmaster Chen smiled and patted her on the shoulder. He was a teacher, a friend, and an elder as he sincerely taught her. In life, one should be indomitable. No matter if you are a man or a woman, you must live up to your conscience and be able to carry the sky. You are a good child. Let bygones be bygones. Walk the path under your feet. If you are happy, smile. If you are sad, look up at the sky, look around you, and look at the world. Fight for yourself. You are also responsible for your life. Do you understand? Chapter 47. To live up to the heavens above and the earth below. She did not have that much self-awareness yet. She only hoped that she could live up to the teachings of her 2 elders and live up to their expectations. Go back to the dorm tonight and calm down. After self-study tomorrow night, go straight to the school's back door. I'll pick you up. She knew that the road ahead was difficult, but she was fearless. Principal Chen admired this kind of Yi Qian. If she wanted to go far and stand high, she could only rely on herself. This child had a clear mind. Principal Chen admired Yi Qian's self-improvement. In the face of the current, she also maintained a calm mentality. From how she handled Yi Ying's matter, it could be seen that she was very clear about the severity of the situation. On Tuesday night, Yi Qian began his first training. Yi Qian, I'm a sniper. What I can teach you is all the experience I've accumulated in my career as a sniper. You still have a choice now. Retreat or advance. I'll give you 1 minute to consider. In the dimly lit training room, Principal Chen stood in the darkness like a leopard roaming in the night. Even though his voice sounded old and weathered, it was impossible to ignore the murderous aura around him. Sniper, under the dim light, Yi Qian's entire body trembled slightly. It turned out that this seemingly amiable principal was actually a sniper. No wonder he exuded a murderous aura that made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. He pursed his lips and suppressed the trembling in his heart. His calm gaze was like an ancient well without ripples in the dim light. He said calmly, "There's no choice. I can only advance. I will never retreat. From now on, there's no turning back." Principal Chen nodded. Standing with his hands behind his back, he began the first training session in a low and serious voice. Snipers are the grim reaper in the eyes of the enemy, but in the eyes of their comrades, they are heroes. They are the most outstanding comrades. They go deep into the enemy's camp alone and use the guns in their hands to win the first victory of the war. Yi Qian, you better be mentally prepared. The snipers I train will not stay in peaceful countries. They will go deep into the front lines of any country and complete the mission given to them by the country. Since he wanted to train this lass well, the training program he came up with was so harsh that it would make a soldier's scalp tingle. Yi Qian, who was listening intently, had already adjusted his breathing. Under the cold gaze of Principal Chen, he pursed his lips, straightened his back, and listened intently. In the recruit assembly camp in town, the cold-eyed Principal Chen began the first step of his 4-year plan. A sniper not only needs accurate marksmanship, but also a strong body and an iron will. He was a sniper, so other than teaching Yi Qian how to use the various sniper rifles, he also had to train Yi Qian's stamina and willpower. In addition to implementing sniping concepts and mastering the weapon system, professional sniping training also requires you to learn a lot more. During the training process, unless you really collapse, you have to grit your teeth and persevere until the end. Yiqian listened intently and nodded solemnly. Under the calm surface, her blood was boiling. I'll listen to everything you say. I won't back down. Chapter 48. Do you understand? The last sentence was as merciless as metal, a stern command. Yiqian did not pause for a moment. She held her head high and answered firmly, Understood. Under the hellish training of a world-class sniper, this day became the most difficult beginning of Yiqian's life. After 10 minutes of warming up, she stood still in place. She was not only standing, but she also had to answer the number flashing on the training field. While answering, she was not allowed to move her body. If she moved even the slightest bit, an ant would be placed next to her neck. 34, 27, 870,994. All the number flashes were controlled by AI. In 3 seconds, 4 to 5 numbers would appear at the same time, and the maximum number would be 7. From 1 to 100, Yiqian had to answer correctly in the blink of an eye. This was to train Yiqian's reaction and observation skills to her surroundings. It was also to train Yiqian's willpower and concentration. The firing time of a sniper rifle is 0.22 seconds. After 0.22 seconds, either your bullet will pierce the enemy's forehead, or the enemy's bullet will take away your soul. If you want to survive, basic training is the first step. Because he was concerned that Yiqian was still a child, Principal Qin did not use the real thing at the beginning of the training. It was like ants crawling into a person's neck. This was child's play. Even ordinary soldiers would encounter it when they were in hiding. After standing for an hour, Yiqian's concentration did not waver because of the passage of time. Instead, she became more and more focused. By the time the number flashes appeared, she had already called out the exact serial numbers from beginning to end. Left 187, right 591. Over. Not only was her concentration high, but her reaction was also at an excellent level. Principal Chen, who had a folder in his hand, scribbled on it, recording Yiqian's performance on the first day of training. Basic training and sniper training were carried out simultaneously. After 2 months of intensive basic training, he would let Yiqian touch a real gun, a loaded gun. From Tuesday to Friday, Yiqian was an ordinary student during the day. At night, he would become a sniper in training, constantly learning and strengthening himself. In just a few days, the changes from inside to outside were obvious. Her clear and beautiful face was no longer delicate. She was no longer a budding flower, but a pine tree that could withstand the scorching sun and the torrential rain. That kind of change was not something that could be seen at a glance. It was like the spring rain that moistened things silently. By the time you noticed it, everyone would have already gotten used to Yiqian. Yiqian, who had returned to the village after Zhou Weiwei, ran down the mountain. He slowed down and walked step by step until he reached Uncle Jen. It's an improvement from last week. You're 3 minutes faster. Not bad. Uncle Jen took a puff of his hookah and put the stopwatch in his pocket. He looked at the hard-working girl in front of him and said in a kind voice, Don't rush it. Let's take it slow. Chapter 49. It's good that you understand. Learn from Principal Chen at school. He's very capable. Grandpa is old, so there's not much I can teach you. Grandpa Jen put the hookah on his waist and smiled at Yiqian, who was wiping his sweat. Let's go. I'll take you to a nice place. You'll like it. Yiqian quickly put the towel around his neck and picked up the bucket of water. He followed Grandpa Jen with steady steps. His laughter was clearer than the birds in the bamboo forest. Where are we going, Grandpa? You haven't had breakfast yet. Shall we go back and cook some noodles? No need. There'll be food when we get there. Put the bucket down. We'll bring it back tonight. Grandpa Jen walked with a smile. The 70-year-old man walked in the mountains with steady steps. Even the young men would admit defeat. The back of the mountain was a large bamboo forest. The morning mist shrouded the forest, making it look like paradise on earth. Grandpa Jen stopped in front of a cellar used by every household in the village to store sweet potatoes. He ordered Yiqian, Girl, open the door of the cellar. For as long as Yi Qian could remember, there was a cellar in his house. But he didn't expect this. There was a completely different world behind the cellar. Be careful. Don't be afraid. Follow Grandpa. Walking in the dark tunnel that seemed to lead deep underground, Yi Qian touched the dry stone walls with both hands. The shock in his heart was no less than the shock he felt when he was reborn. He also understood how those soldiers came to the house from time to time. It turned out that they all went through this long tunnel in the mountains and directly entered the village without alerting any of the villagers. The tunnel was quite long. After walking for about half an hour, Yi Qian could faintly see the entrance of the cave. Half an hour. It was a few thousand meters long. Such a large project, yet the villagers didn't notice. Close your eyes for a while. Don't let the light hurt you. Standing at the entrance of the cave, Grandpa Zhen reminded Yi Qian kindly, open your eyes in 3 minutes. When Yi Qian got used to it and opened his eyes again, he saw the troops hidden in the depths of the mountains. They were close at hand. After coming out of the cave, they walked down the mountain. Another half an hour later, they arrived at a road paved with asphalt. Beside the road, there was a white banner with red words, restricted area for troops. 400 meters away, there was an iron-tipped protective net. Behind the net was an iron-tipped gate. Inside and outside the gate, there were 4 armed soldiers standing guard. He then looked into the depths of the forest and saw the sentry post hidden in the depths of the trees. This place was heavily guarded, and under Grandpa Zhen's lead, he was actually able to enter so easily. The soldier with the gun walked over and saluted Uncle General. It was a routine check of his identity. The sound of a car came from the front. A very ordinary car came from afar and stopped steadily in front of the sentry post. The left and right car doors opened at the same time. As the car soldier handed over his ID, the young soldier who jumped down from the front passenger seat strode out of the sentry post towards Yi Qian. Grandpa Zhen, you're here. The young soldier in the military uniform smiled and saluted Grandpa Zhen. I'm afraid I have to go back on my promise from last time. The school called me urgently and I need to go back. I can only come back later. Chapter 50. Yi Jian's dark eyes narrowed slightly when he walked over. She stood beside him without saying a word. Xia Jinyuan, who was talking to Uncle Zhen, secretly glanced at Yi Qian and frowned slightly. Why does this little girl like to shrink back whenever she sees me? Could it be that he had really scared her that day at school? Sure, of course. Xia Jinyuan replied to Uncle Zhen with a faint smile. He glanced at Yi Qian again and said politely, Uncle, I'd like to have a word with Yi Qian in private. Is that okay? Uncle Zhen wasn't surprised that Xia Jinyuan knew Yi Qian. After all, the little girl was the one who helped arrest the 3 suspects. Under the old man's smile, Xia Jinyuan smiled as he looked at Yi Jian, who was staring at him coldly because of his words. His thin lips were already slightly curved. Under the morning sun, the handsome face under the military cap looked even more noble and elegant. Even when he smiled, there was a hint of laziness in his smile. Student Yi Jian, I still have a few words to tell you about the school. Please. Go ahead, little girl. Xia Jinyuan swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Instead, he turned around and walked in the direction Xia Jinyuan was pointing at. She didn't like to have too much interaction with this kind of dangerous man. She couldn't see through him, and she was used to keeping a distance from people she couldn't see through. I'm sorry for my probing at school that day, but I hope you can understand our position. He explained in a low voice. His low voice was elegant and luxurious, like the sound of the strings of a zither. You don't have to be afraid of what I'll do to you. There won't be any surveillance or surveillance. Afraid? It seemed that this major had misunderstood. Yi Qian raised his head and looked at him with clear and fearless eyes. He smiled and said calmly, Captain Xia, you've misunderstood. I'm not afraid. I just don't want to have too much interaction with you. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Without waiting for his reply, Yi Qian turned and left. Xia Jinyuan did not think too much about it. His slender and strong hand had already grasped Yi Qian's delicate shoulder, preventing her from leaving without any explanation. Girl, Your temper is really bad. Why is it completely different from what Uncle said? He smiled helplessly. Uncle is already looking at us. Are you sure you want to listen to me with your back to me? At this moment Yiqin only had one thought in his mind, and that was to take down this major. After thinking about it for a moment, he realized that it was impossible for him to do so. In the future she could give it a try. If you have anything to say, please say it all at once, Captain Xia. Thank you. When he turned around, he skillfully swung his shoulders. His whole body was like a fish, and he escaped from Xia Jinyuan's control. After nearly half a month of training, coupled with Yi Qian's talent, she had learned a lot. Her nimble movements made Xia Jinyuan raise his eyebrows. He smiled slowly and looked at her quietly with his dark eyes. His handsome face was solemn and cold. Listen carefully, Yi Qian. We have already confirmed that there is a problem with Liao Jian's parents. Liao Jian is the same. Please help us keep an eye on his movements in school. Chapter 51. Yi Qian wasn't stupid enough to ask him why he chose her. Since he chose her, he must have his reasons. After listening quietly, she nodded. Okay, I'll keep an eye out. She paused for a moment, then said, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Goodbye. She said goodbye as she turned around. She left as soon as she said goodbye. She didn't hesitate at all. Xia Jinyuan raised his hand and adjusted the brim of his military cap. The faint smile at the corner of his mouth was like a gentle breeze, so light that it disappeared in an instant. This little girl. Does she see me as a scourge? He jumped into the car that was already driving over. From the rearview mirror, he saw the backs of the old man and the young girl gradually moving away from him until they disappeared. The sound of the car finally disappeared among the trees. When Yi Qian entered the military barracks, he turned around to look at the winding mountain road behind him. All he saw was lush green trees. Under the blue sky and white clouds, birds flew and left behind a graceful shadow. As soon as he entered the barracks, whenever he encountered a soldier, they would stop and salute Uncle General. Their words and actions were full of respect. Yi Qian obediently followed Uncle Jen's footsteps. He didn't look or ask anything, as if he was a frequent visitor to the barracks. He wasn't curious at all. Fifth Company, arrange for the soldiers to come over tomorrow night. Have the squad leader prepare a list of names. I want to test them. Standing in front of the soldiers, Uncle Jen's expression was extremely serious. Every word he said was an unquestionable command. Suddenly, a series of consecutive gunshots rang out in front of them. Yi Qian, who had his head down, suddenly looked up. As the gunshots rang out one after another, his heart trembled with the sound of the gunshots. It was as if something in the depths of his body had suddenly awakened. It wanted to break through the restriction and fiercely hit the ground. It's gunshots. The soldiers are hitting targets. Uncle Jen, who had signaled for the soldiers to leave first, looked sideways at Yi Qian and smiled. I'll show you the shooting range later. Today, I'll take you to another place. Their destination was also in the direction of the shooting range. They didn't stop until they reached a barracks where soldiers were standing guard. This was a restricted gun room that normal soldiers could only enter twice a week. Familiar with understood, precise, and professional. The forward banner was hung right in front of the gun room. All the soldiers entering and exiting could see it as long as they raised their heads. The moment he entered the room, Yi Qian's dark eyes lit up like a small flame. When a normal person saw the rows of pitch-black steel spears that were suffused with a cold light, a sense of fear would have already quietly risen from the bottom of their hearts. But Yi Qian only knew that his blood was boiling. It was a thirst for power. It was an urgent desire to touch them. He turned around and looked at Uncle Jen behind him. His clear voice trembled with excitement. Grandpa, can I touch them? There was a cry that came from the depths of his heart. It kept calling him to walk over, reach out, and pick up the rows of guns that were gleaming with a dark, cold light. Chapter 52. She finally knew what it was that wanted to break through the restriction in her body. It was a desire to become stronger and more perfect. Haha, aren't you afraid, little girl? Uncle Jen laughed as he looked at the little girl whose eyes lit up when she saw the gun. His wrinkled face was full of smiles. These are all guns, real guns that can be used once they are loaded with bullets. They are not the toy guns you have seen before. Yiqian shook her head and smiled. I'm not afraid. Principal Chen taught me that you can only truly control a gun if you develop feelings for it. Let it become your helper, a helper that can save your comrades in times of danger. He's right. Before you develop feelings for a gun, you have to understand it first. The little girl's eyes were filled with excitement, but there was no sign of fear. Uncle Jen saw this and laughed in his heart. He walked to the front of the rows of steel guns and casually picked up an assault rifle. As he quickly disassembled it, he energetically said, N70AB2, Russian Kalashnikov AK-101 assault rifle, NATO 5. 6mm ammunition. It was designed by the former Soviet Union's famous gun designer, Kalashnikov, commonly known as a submachine gun. Uncle Jen dismantled the gun very quickly. At the same time, he used special tools. In less than 5 minutes, the assault rifle was dismantled by him into a pile of parts. How many parts did I dismantle just now? Uncle Jen pointed at the scattered gun parts on the table and suddenly asked, Give me a number. From the moment he picked up the gun, he was already in the middle of training. Yiqian pointed at the parts on the table. Her clear black eyes contained a faint smile as she said, This is the last part that you put down. This is the 47th part that was dismantled. This is the part that you dismantled at step 74. Grandpa, you dismantled a total of 80 parts. Am I right? Not only was he right, but he was very accurate. After half a month of teaching, Yiqian had already developed the ability to enter the training state at any time. Whether it was Principal Chen or Uncle Jen, they loved to ask questions suddenly. Uncle Jen laughed again and said, not bad at all. While observing, you are also better at understanding. The 47th part is the recoil spring lock. When the bullet is fired, the bolt will lock the thinnest part of the gun so that the gun won't return to its original position. Thus, the gun can continue to fire continuously. The 74th part is called the gun buckle. This function is? As Uncle Jen picked up the parts one by one and explained them one by one, Yiqian, who had zero knowledge of the gun's structure, began to understand it. For the whole day, Uncle Jen kept dismantling the guns, while Yiqian kept repeating how many parts each gun had and what they were used for. Assault rifles, shotguns, semi-automatic pistols, manual rifles, revolvers. Not only had she touched a series of firearms, but she had also disassembled them herself. She had a deeper understanding of them. Revolver, ejector lever, central spring, rebounding block lever, camera body. Yiqian mumbled as she walked towards the classroom with her textbook in her arms. She recalled the knowledge she had learned yesterday and this morning over and over again in her mind. Chapter 53. Xianxia chased after Yiqian from behind. She had already called out to him several times, but there was no response. She couldn't help but feel worried. Just as she was about to catch up, Yiqian sensed something and looked back. He happened to see the worry on her face clearly. What's wrong? You don't look too good. No, I called out to you 3 or 4 times, but there was no response. I got mad. Yiqian's smile was still bright and beautiful. There was no change in his expression. And Xianxia secretly let out a sigh of relief. Sorry, I was studying and didn't hear you. Yiqian saw her expression and calmly waved the book in his hand. He smiled and said, Once the holidays are over, the midterm exams are coming up. I have to hurry up and study. There was no time at night, no time on Saturday, and no time on Sunday. She could only squeeze in time to study for the entire semester. That's right, Yiqian was studying for the entire semester, not just what he had already studied. And Xianxia's worries were swept away. She giggled and said, Okay, it just so happens that I also need to study. After the evening self-study session, let's each do 10 questions in the classroom before we go back to the dorm. She waved the test papers in her hand and looked at Yiqian with a pleading expression. Do me a favor and finish this test paper with me. My mom bought it. Was this what you were worried about? Yiqian took the 2 sets of test papers from her hands and casually flipped through them. He smiled at her and said, "These are very simple questions. What's there to worry about? Listen, Ying, listen. Some people just don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Xie Sifeng's cold voice came from behind her. She mocked, "Does she really think she's that great?" And Jiasin stopped in her tracks. She tugged on Yiqian's sleeve and said in a low voice, "She took half a month off. Isn't she afraid that she won't be able to keep up? She's the one who thinks she's infallible." She was referring to Yi Ying, who took 2 weeks off. Based on my understanding of her, taking half a month off is definitely not a break. Yiqian didn't turn around. He smiled faintly and said, "Teacher Ka has to leave the school during the lunch break. He even brought along the math teacher from class 3. Guess where the 2 teachers are going?" And Jiasin immediately thought of something and exclaimed, "It can't be." "Of course. So, classmaten, work hard." Yiqian raised his eyebrows and smiled, ignoring the stares coming from behind him. Ying had always been smart. How could she lose her final advantage in school? At this moment, Ying coldly retracted her gaze. At the same time, she pursed her lips tightly and lifted her chin slightly. She said to Xie Sifeng, "Why do you care about her? What will happen to arrogant people?" "That's right. What would happen to an arrogant and complacent person like her?" Yiqian, who had walked to the door of the classroom, turned around and smiled at her. The corners of his mouth curved into a cold sneer. "Ying, I will crush your pride with my own hands." Their gazes met. They were like fire and water. Yi Ying, who only dared to return to school after half a month of peace, secretly gritted her teeth. No matter how angry she was, she had to endure it. After a series of suppression, Ying finally understood that from now on, Yiqian would never listen to her obediently. And she could no longer threaten Yiqian with words like, "If you dare to do better than me, I'll kick you out of my house." Chapter 54. There was still half an hour before the evening self-study session. Most of the students in the class had arrived. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and had endless topics to talk about. Yiqian and Jiasin entered the classroom. A few students who had gathered to discuss the test immediately said, "Did you do the last geometry question? It's so difficult. I can't do it at all." "Don't ask me. I didn't do it." And Jiasin put down her bag and said domineeringly, "I don't know how to do it. I didn't do it. It's that simple." "No way. You didn't even do it. Yiqian can do it. Look for her." And Jiasin took out the test paper and said loudly to Yiqian, who was still in his seat, "There's still half an hour before the evening self-study session. Let's talk about how to solve this question first." Her voice had always been loud. Even the students who were messing around could hear her. They all stopped and looked at Yiqian. A student laughed and said, Come, teach us. You're much more generous than Yi Ying." Every time Yi Ying was asked to teach her, she had to put on airs. She would either say that she was still thinking about it or that she didn't have time now. Yiqian was different. As long as she was asked, she would answer patiently even if she had something to say. Yi Ying, who had just come in after adjusting her emotions, heard this sentence. She almost lost her composure. When the student who said this saw her, his gaze drifted. He smiled awkwardly but didn't explain anything. It was the truth. He wasn't spouting nonsense. Yi Ying, who had taken half a month of leave, could only endure it. She sat down with pursed lips and accepted the greetings from her classmates. Only then did a smile appear in her gloomy eyes. "Thank you for your concern. I didn't want to take half a month off because of a small matter," she said with a smile. There was a faint smile on her beautiful face, just like before. There was nothing different. When Xie Sifeng heard this, she immediately said, "What do you mean by a small matter? My mom said that you went to the city for a checkup and found a problem with your heart. She also said that it's difficult to treat and can only be nursed. You can't be too emotional. She also said that you can't even run." "What? A problem with her heart? It's so serious that she can't even run." The students who heard this were stunned. Some of them could not help but put their hands on their chests. When they looked at Yi Ying again, their eyes were filled with pity. However, Jiasun didn't believe him. She wrote down the formula on the paper and said softly, "Are you serious? You only found out now that you have a heart problem?" Her mother was a doctor in the town hospital, so she knew a little bit of medical knowledge. So what if it's true or false? It has nothing to do with us. You're wrong here. You have to use this formula to calculate the area of the shadow first. Yi Qian smiled faintly. He did not take her matter to heart. Heart problems? I can't be too agitated. If anyone mentioned the love letter in front of her, it was very likely that she would have a heart attack. Suffering from heart disease was indeed a very good excuse. This kind of lie, which no one would verify, was probably Yi Jifan's doing. The students in the class all expressed their concern. After Yi Qian and the others finished discussing the test paper, they all went to Yi Ying's side to greet her. Yi Qian was no exception. When she walked over, Xia Sifeng blocked her like a mother hen protecting her chick. She said in a sharp voice, "What are you trying to do?" She was not the only one who was nervous. The other students also had some thoughts when Yi Qian walked over. After all, Yi Ying treated her like that in the past. Chapter 55. Look, Daddy still has a way. Who would dare to say anything now? Even if the damned girl told her classmates, who would dare to say it to her face? Who could bear the responsibility of a heart attack? The provocation in Yi Ying's eyes was too obvious, so obvious that Yi Qian could see it. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and a cold light flashed in her dark eyes. She walked up to Yi Ying. Yi Ying's heart tightened when she met her cold gaze. Suddenly, she saw her raise her hand, and her whole body tensed up. She dodged and shouted, "What are you trying to do? Why are you so nervous?" Relax. When the students thought that Yi Qian was going to do something, she raised her hand and patted Yi Ying's shoulder gently. She said in a clear voice, "Take care of your body. Don't get angry so easily." Phew. So she didn't want to hit Yi Ying. Yi Ying, who knew that she was being played, forced herself to hold it in. She replied with a fake smile, "Thank you for your concern. I'll take good care of myself." Yi Qian pursed her lips and smiled. Her eyes were already curved. How can someone as young as you compete with her? So what if you have parents? You're digging your own grave. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Qian leaned over and whispered into Yi Ying's ear, whose whole body was tense, "Let's take it slow. Don't be so nervous. You're only halfway through your 3rd year of middle school." Her voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible, but it made Yi Ying feel as if she was being stared at by a beast. The hand that was still on her shoulder felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, making it difficult for her to breathe. Looking at Yi Ying, who was trembling in fear, the smile on Yi Jian's face deepened and her eyes shone even brighter. She calmly retracted her hand and looked up at the students with a smile. "Class is about to start. You're dismissed." She was so easily frightened. Hopefully she didn't get a heart attack. The students didn't know that the two sisters were secretly fighting. Seeing that they were still chatting and laughing, they didn't think much of it and returned to their seats when the bell rang. After Mr. Ko came in, his eyes swept over Yi Ying's face. He walked to the podium and said with a serious expression, "Students, due to health reasons, Yi Ying from our class?" Now that the teacher had said it himself, Yi Ying's heart disease was confirmed. The next day, even the students from the next class knew about it. However, Gao Yang was the only one in the class who cared about her. The rest of her pursuers had silently asked their classmates from Class 2 to care about her. Handsome and tall, he walked into Class 2's classroom with an indifferent expression. Miraculously, the noisy class fell silent for 3 seconds. Walking to Yi Ying's side, he frowned and said in a deep voice, "I'll take you to the province for a checkup during the May Day holiday. Your complexion looks rosy. How could you have congenital heart disease?" Her honesty almost made Yi Qian laugh out loud. She looked at the flustered Yi Ying with interest. She covered her mouth and said coldly, "My business has nothing to do with you. Leave now." "My uncle is the director of the provincial hospital. There are still 8 days before the May Day holiday. Think about it before replying to me." Not only did she reject him, she even pointed at his nose and asked him to leave. Gao Yang, who had always been cold and arrogant, endured it. He said something in a low voice and turned to leave. The director of the provincial hospital. Yi Ying's pupils contracted. So his family had such powerful connections. She regretted her harsh tone just now. Yi Qian looked at her small face. One moment she was smiling, the next she was annoyed. He suddenly found it funny. He looked away indifferently and buried his head in the sea of books again. Chapter 56. It was still slightly chilly at night before the May Day holiday season, especially when it was raining, which made it even colder. Yi Jian had been standing in the rain for half an hour. Among them, there was a wolf dog that was chained to a leash. It was growling less than 10 centimeters away from her, and its growls made her heart tremble. A sniper's ambush can sometimes last a few hours, and sometimes it can last a few days. You never know when you'll encounter danger. Accept fear, get used to it, and overcome it. This is a necessary psychological quality for a good sniper. In the heavy rain, Principal Chen's steely voice cut through the rain. He had spent his entire life training Yi Qian. Be on standby and ambush 24 hours a day. You'll face wind and rain, lightning, blizzard, and scorching sun. Learn to ignore the effects of nature and the environment on you. That way, you won't waste a single bullet. The rain was getting heavier, but his words were like a heavy drum in the rain that struck Yi Qian's heart. If you want to see the rainbow after the storm, you must first be able to withstand the baptism of the storm. Yi Qian stood motionless. The wolfhound treated her as an intruder and growled madly. The chains rattled as if it would break free and pounce on her in the next second. It wasn't that she wasn't afraid, but that she was afraid and had no way to retreat. If she swayed even a little, she would be pricked by the steel needles at her feet and bleed. In Principal Chen's words, if you retreat, your comrades will be the ones bleeding. Remember, once you pick up a sniper rifle, you have no way to retreat. You must complete the mission beautifully and eliminate the target. If you don't want to bleed or sacrifice your comrades, then you must become stronger. After an hour of standing in the rain, Yi Qian felt as if her legs didn't belong to her anymore. Principal Chen walked over with a towel and slowly squatted down. He looked kindly at Yi Qian, who had fallen into the rain because of her weak legs. He said slowly, word by word, "Girl, you chose your own path. Walk it with blood and tears in your eyes. Only then will you be able to welcome your peak." He gently placed the towel on Yi Qian's head and sincerely taught her, "You will be brighter than a flower in a greenhouse. You will grow little by little under the sun. Without your parents to protect you, believe me, my child, you will live a more exciting life than anyone else." Principal Chen had already heard about what happened during the day. He had been silent for a long time before he added tonight's training. He was telling Yi Qian that she was different. You relied on your own two hands to get what you want. That is your true ability, and no one can replace it. Yi Jian, who had caught her breath, raised her head. Her eyes were as bright as a mirror after being washed by the rain. They were so clear that they could reflect the beauty and ugliness of everything. Raising his hand, Xianxia wiped the rainwater off his face. Under the gaze of the elder, he smiled and said, "I will persevere on, not for anyone else but for myself. Don't worry, I, Yi Jian, will never give up halfway on the path I've chosen, nor will I let difficulties surpass me." With a sharp sword in hand, she would cut through the difficulties, cut through the thorns, and walk on a broad path. Headmaster Chen laughed out loud and said, "Good," 3 times in a row. He stood up and said, "Good child, you are fearless and magnanimous. Yi Ying is no match for you." Chapter 57. Principal Chen thought for a while, then nodded with a smile. "If that's the case, then all the more you have to work hard. Go change in the hot water room. I have something to do in the front. Tonight's training will end early." She had been in the rain for an hour. After all, she was still growing. If she rushed it, it would hurt her body. When Yi Jian came out of the hot shower, She saw Headmaster Chen talking to a middle-aged man in his 40s in the training room. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt and a pair of perfectly ironed black trousers. He was talking in a low voice. "Come girl, let me introduce you to this uncle." Principal Chen waved at Yi Qian, who had already put on her school uniform. "There's something I'd like to ask your opinion on. What do you think?" The middle-aged man was obviously from a military background. He smiled and sized up Yi Qian. After nodding slightly, he said to Principal Chen, "I've been observing you for a while. This child is indeed a hard-working one." Yi Qian hurried over and greeted him politely, "Uncle." Then she heard him say with a smile, "Just now, Headmaster Chen said that it's not very convenient for you to live in the dormitory now. If you go back at 11 o'clock every night, it will more or less affect your classmates in the dormitory. See if you can consider moving out." "Move out?" Yi Qian was stunned. She had indeed considered moving out. Especially after seeing Yi Ying today, she wanted to move out even more. She hadn't thought of a plan yet, but Principal Chen had already arranged it for her. The feeling of being cared for by an elder was really good, really good. "I've thought about moving out, but now I'm still thinking." Before she could finish, Yi Qian suddenly looked up at Principal Chen, then at Uncle Yang. Her eyes were filled with joy. Principal Chen knew that she had guessed it. He laughed and patted the middle-aged man's hand. "Commander Yang, I'll have to trouble you to take care of this child for the next 1.5 years. You're too polite. It's rare that you need our help. This matter is settled. As long as the child is willing, you can rest assured on our side." Battalion Commander Yang repeatedly waved his hands. He was ashamed to accept Principal Chen's gratitude. "She's staying in a room with a separate bathroom and balcony. She's still a student. How about this? I'll add a bookcase and a desk lamp for her tomorrow. What do you think? You arrange it, you arrange it." Seeing that Yi Qian had considered everything thoroughly, Principal Chen was even more relieved to let Yi Qian live alone in the recruit assembly camp. Not only was it safe here, it also wouldn't attract any attention. Yi Qian didn't know how many times his eyes reddened. He bowed deeply to Battalion Commander Yang. "Thank you, Uncle Yang. I won't cause you any trouble." Before he could bend his waist completely, Battalion Commander Yang's strong hand had already reached out to stop him. He said in a low voice, "You're too polite, kid. Remember, we soldiers are indomitable. Straighten your back." More than one person had told Yi Qian that no matter what, he had to straighten his back and never bend his waist easily. By the time he returned to school, it was already 11 at night. Yi Qian gently pushed open the door to the dorm. Dai Qing's brows furrowed slightly. In order to make it easier for the dorm management teacher to check on the dorm rooms, all dorm rooms were not allowed to be locked from the inside. But tonight, it was locked from the inside. Chapter 58. Yi Qian didn't knock on the door. His dark eyes stared at the closed door, a cold smile spreading from the corner of his mouth to the depths of his eyes. "Very good. She's starting to make small moves as soon as she comes back." Without knocking, he turned around and went straight to Jiasen's room. "What? Lock the door? How dare she?" And Jiasen's face flashed fiercely under the covers. She gritted her teeth and said, "She's a piece of trash. She's been picking on you since she came back." Yi Qian wasn't angry. Instead, he raised his hand to support his head and laughed softly. "It's a good excuse to move out of the dorm." "No, it's an excuse to move out of the school." Since Yi Qian had a dorm that was convenient for his training, he listened to Principal Chen and moved out after class tomorrow. He would use the night self-study time on sniping lessons. And Jiasen was immediately interested when she heard this. "Move out? Really? Does that mean I can come out to find you more often?" "Classmaiden, wait until I move out," Yi Qian sneered, closed his eyes and murmured, "It's getting late. I'll get up early tomorrow and go jogging." "You're lying." And Jiasen saw that she wasn't excited at all about moving out. She snorted, turned over, and quickly fell asleep. In the dorm, Ying was still waiting for Yi Qian to knock on the door. She didn't expect that when she went to sleep, it was still quiet outside. When she opened the door the next day, She saw Yi Qian and Jiasun walking over from the washroom with a basin in their hands. Their hair was wet, and they brushed past each other. They didn't even look at her. She didn't return to the dorm until 11 at night for the past few weeks. What could she be doing? Yi Ying stared at the figure that was getting slimmer and slimmer. Even her figure seemed to have grown taller. Yi Ying's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and a dark, cold light flitted across them. You're asking me where Yi Qian goes at night? If she doesn't go back to the dorm after class, where else could she go? Liao Jian glared at Xia Sifeng, who had taken the initiative to look for him. His eyes turned slightly, and his face, which had a few pimples, suddenly revealed a ruffian smile. That's simple. You pay and I do the work. How about it? When Xia Sifeng heard that there was hope, she immediately said, How much? We're all classmates. You won't ask for too much, right? Don't worry, 10 yuan is nothing to you. It just so happens that I also want to know where she went when she returned to the dormitory so late at night. Liao Jian's eyes darkened and his face revealed a look of resentment. That brat had embarrassed him in class that day. He had been waiting to settle this score with her. Leaving school at night, huh? That's easy. At this time, Yi Qian was already in the teacher's office. He told Teacher Ku that he was moving out of the school and that he had been locked out of the dormitory last night. Teacher Ku, who had wanted to say more, immediately shut her mouth. She snorted coldly and glanced at Yi Qian provocatively. Fine, you can sign this letter of commitment yourself. If anything happens, it has nothing to do with the school or the teachers. Moving out? If an undisciplined girl were to come into contact with some bad people outside, it would be too easy for her to learn bad things. Yi Qian glanced at it and signed his name without hesitation. He maintained a polite smile and said calmly, Teacher Ku, don't worry. I'll take good care of myself. I won't cause any trouble for the school or the teachers. Chapter 59. Her etiquette was impeccable, and her grades were improving day by day. This gave Teacher Ku, who wanted to teach her a lesson from time to time, no chance at all. In the afternoon, Yi Jian really packed up her luggage and quilt. She left the school alone with a very big woven bag in her hand. She didn't even look back. And Jiasun was holding her textbooks for her and followed behind her like a fool. She still couldn't believe it until she walked out of the school gate. She said blankly, You're really out? You really moved out. She always thought it was a joke. Of course it's true. Didn't I tell you last night? Yi Qian moved her luggage to a common three-wheeled passenger car in town and said to Jiasun, who was still in a daze, Hurry up and get in. It won't be good if your name is recorded. And Jiasun hurriedly put the bag containing her textbooks on the car and rubbed her face before replying, You did a good job. Just now Ying's face was so twisted. How could it not be twisted? If she wasn't in the dorm, Ying wouldn't have an excuse to talk bad about her in front of her classmates. I don't care about her right now, and I don't want to deal with her. I just want to study hard and get into the provincial high school. It's a waste of my time to argue with her. Since she couldn't directly kill her and kick her out of school and leave her with nothing, why waste her energy? After Yi Qian finished speaking, she nimbly jumped onto the car and waved at Jiasun. Then she took her luggage and moved into a brand new place. People came and went after school, so Yi Qian's departure didn't attract much attention. Only Liao Jian, who had a lollipop in his mouth, looked at the leaving tricycle with a cold smile. He walked to the motorcycle that picked him up and patted the back of the young man with the green tattoo on the back of his hand. Brother, let me introduce you to a hot chick. She's my classmate. How hot can your classmate be? There are 2 chicks from your province in the restaurant. Their chests bounced up and down as they walked. Brother will take you to Lele. Brother Fei was a famous hooligan in town and had a good relationship with Liao Jian's father. He often took Liao Jian to have fun. As soon as the motorcycle started, it left behind a trail of black smoke and disappeared into the school gate. Yi Qian, who was no longer restricted by accommodation, began to improve by leaps and bounds. That kind of improvement surprised even Principal Chen. Yi Qian became even more infatuated with sniping the moment he touched a gun for the first time. It was the infatuated bullet that flew unstoppably and hit its target. He was infatuated with the joy of defeating himself again and again. During the entire May Day holiday, Yiqian followed Principal Chen and Uncle Zhen to practice again and again in the deep mountains and forests. He gritted his teeth and endured the hardships again and again. Target is 470 meters away, hit between the eyebrows. After putting away his sniper rifle, Yiqian carried his gun and jumped down from the tall tree. He hugged the tree trunk and stepped on the branches. When he reached a certain height, he jumped down from the tree. Her face was covered in green paint and she wore a helmet that didn't quite match. Her palm-sized face looked especially small and delicate. Principal Chen picked up the straw man target and walked over the bushes. He removed the empty bullet that was shot between the straw man's eyebrows and handed it to Yiqian. Keep it well. It is also a witness to your growth. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.